Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning everyone. What we are going to discuss today is the idea that econometric tools can be used for various purposes of data analysis that could be used in turn to make policy evaluations, for business analysis and various other decision makings in life. So, when I say that econometric tools can be used for business data analysis, for policy evaluation, what do I mean? So, you can think of any question in your day to day life and you can think of whether you are talking about correlations or whether you are talking about causality in them. For instance, suppose I say that a student who attends this class of mine, does he learn anything from this class? Okay. So, I have given a lecture, you have possibly heard all my lectures very attentively and you have possibly also taken the tests that I would give at the end of the lecture. But what do you learn in the end? How do I know that? Do I just assume that if you attend my classes and heard my lectures you have learned something, or do I actually do some kind of statistical analysis that if 100 students attended my class, how many of them learned how much in my class? So, you can ask similar type of questions when it comes to, let us say, policy analysis, like suppose you want to understand that how do you motivate students to go for college education. Now, many of the students in our country, in countries, in poorer countries, they attend certain levels of education like primary education, some of them would go for secondary education, some of them would go for college education, but as you progress in your career through schooling, what you see is that many people actually drop out of school. This could be because, this could be for various reasons. It could be because they have some economic limitations in their households, it could be because they are demotivated. Now, what can the government do? What can the country as a whole do to enroll more students in college? Because we know in the end that more students in college, more educated they become, it is better for them in the future. They can earn higher wages, they can have better employment. So, do we just look at college education and see what is their outcome, the people who go to college and people who do not go to college, and just compare the two outcomes and say that, see, if people go to college, they are getting better educated, they are having better employment, have higher salaries, and people who do not go to college have lower salaries, have less employment probabilities? Do we just go by those differences? Now, the problem is that when you look at children who are attending college, who possibly some of you who have come to attend this course of mine are essentially motivated to learn, to do something better in your life, are ambitious. So, we do not know whether this motivation is driving the final difference in salary between people who attend this class or people who attend college and those who do not, or whether it is actually the learning in this class which is affecting your final outcome in terms of either wages or employment or both. So, what we take up today in the very first discussion is essentially one example from the health industry, from medical sciences. So, typically one of the questions for elderly in any population across the world is whether the elderly are better off in terms of their health if you send them to the hospital. The question is that how do you actually test whether they are better off when they are sent to the hospital, as opposed to whether they are either at home with their families or in some sort of let us say assisted living in some countries. How do we know which one works better for them, whether hospitals actually make them happier and healthier? To understand this, suppose we have this particular example where we are monitoring health status of those who went to the hospital to those who did not go to the hospital. And so this data is actually taken out of a certain survey that was conducted in the United States, where people were asked, the elderly in the population, they were asked in the last 12 months how would you rank your health in the last 12 months. So, suppose we go to this survey in the, so we are talking about a survey in the United States, where elderly in the population, they were asked various questions about their health. One of those questions essentially asked, how do you feel today? Do you feel healthy or do you feel unhealthy? So, they were supposed to rank on a scale of 1 to 5 how healthy or how happy or how good they feel on that very particular day. So, suppose the question is such that I ask you, how healthy do you feel today, and you rank on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is basically the best of health and 5 is the worst of health. You rank, how do you feel today? At the same time, I ask these same people, how many times have you been hospitalized in the last 12 months? Then what I can say is that people who were hospitalized, how do they feel today, and people who were not hospitalized in the last 12 months, how do they feel today? And the results are in front of you. What you see is there are about 7,774 households or elderly actually who were asked how do they feel today, and these are the people who went to the hospital at least once in the last 12 months. And their average ranking on a scale of 1 to 5, as I told you, is 2.79, and people who did not go to the hospital, which was the majority of the people, as you can see, which is more than 90,000, their average is 2.07, and as I said that 1 is a better number than 5 when you were ranking your health status. So, what does this mean? This means that there is a difference of about 0.72 between people who were hospitalized and people who were not hospitalized. And in fact, what you see is that the people who were hospitalized actually feel worse, because the higher numbers indicate that you are worse off in terms of your health, actually feel worse than people who were not hospitalized. Does this mean that we are going to treat hospitalization as bad for the health of the elderly just by looking at this data, or is there something else going on? So, let us break it up. Let us see what else could be going on in this particular number, in this particular statistics that we have in front of us. So, one possibility that you can think of is that elderly who went to the hospital were possibly much worse off in terms of their health than elderly who did not go to the hospital to begin with. So, for instance, if I fall sick, if I had some sickness in the last 12 months, maybe I fell on the floor, maybe I had a fever, something else maybe that forced me to go to the hospital because it was so bad in terms of my health status. On the other hand, there are these other people who did not go to the hospital, possibly because they did not require hospitalization. So, their health overall was good to start with. Now, when we compare these two groups, of course, we are going to see that the people who did not go to the hospital in the last 12 months are anyway better in terms of their health than people who did go to the hospital in the last 12 months. So, a naive comparison that you see over here is not really telling you that hospitalization makes people worse off. All that it is saying is that in the data, when you just compare the means between elderly who went to the hospital and elderly who did not go to the hospital, you just see that elderly who went to the hospital have worse health than elderly who did not go to the hospital. It could be because hospitalization actually makes them worse off because it is psychologically draining, etc., etc. It could also be that they would have been much worse off had they not been hospitalized. So, what we are talking about here is this state of had they not being treated, had they not gone to the hospital. That is what we call a counterfactual. What would have happened had you not been treated? So, what would have happened had you not been attending this class of mine? Had you not been appearing for this course, had you not gone to college, what would have been your employment probability, what would have been your wages in the market had you not gone to college? This is what we are trying to understand today. You can take some other examples. For instance, you can think of primary school enrollment. So, in our country as in all other countries, we care about where students are attending classes or not. Now, our main hypothesis there or theory is, or our prior there is that we assume that if students attend classes, they will learn more than if they were sitting at home and reading the same book, for instance. So, what we want to know is whether attending classes make students more knowledgeable. Any class, you can think of primary classes, you can think of secondary classes or college classes. So, one of the questions is that does class attendance improve education, improve learning outcomes? Now, once again you can do a similar test what we just saw on the slides, people who went to hospital and did not go to hospital. Similarly, what you can do is you can just see what is the learning outcome of children who attended 10 classes, let us say, and children who did not attend 10 classes. Now, you take the difference in learning outcomes between the two groups, people who were sitting at home and reading the same books and people who went to the class and heard the teacher lecturing. And then can you say something about the effect of this teacher's teaching you on your learning? The point is that maybe not, because people who went to the class to hear the teacher lecturing are possibly more motivated. They went to the class, they spent time. On the other hand, possibly the other children who just sat at home and read the books, the same books, but possibly not as motivated. So, we do not know, even if you see in equilibrium that students who went to the class are learning more, you do not know whether they are learning more simply because they are more motivated or because me as a teacher have given you something to learn. So, that is why we need to understand what we would do in this course is to methods, in other words different statistical methods that can be utilized to distinguish between the true effect that hospitalization has on your health or the true effect that attending classes has on your learning from the correlational or the observed effect that we see just by comparing the means of the two groups. So, the very first approach that would come to your mind, which also comes from medical sciences, the trials done in medical sciences to understand the impact that a particular medicine would have on a particular disease, on treating a particular disease, is this treatment control approach or the experimental approach. So, what I would do is, suppose I wanted to learn in a group of maybe 100 of you, whether learning by attending my class has a different impact or a higher impact than learning the same material by just going through the notes that I gave you, by just looking through my slides. So, what I could do is I could take a group of 100 students and randomly pick 50 of them and make them sit in my class. On the other hand, I could make the 50 other people who again picked randomly and I make them not sit in my class, but go through the same lecture notes at home. And maybe end of 20 classes, I ask them to write a test, both the groups. And what I do is, I check the difference in learning by looking at the test outcomes of the group of 50 who attended my classes and the group of 50 who did not attend my classes. And then I try to infer from there whether attending my class has an impact on learning. Now, the point is that because I had chosen the people in a particular class and randomly to not attend my class, what this means is that anything else like motivation or maybe a general IQ or your preparedness for the class does not affect your probability of attending my class, because I have chosen whether a particular person in you would actually attend my class or not. I do not give you the option, the decision to choose whether to attend my class or not. Now, this is what is called randomization. We will talk more about this as we go through the different lectures in this course, but roughly speaking, this is what the experimental method is, that I randomly choose some of you into treatment and I randomly choose some of you into the control, which is no treatment, and then compare the mean differences between the two groups. And then I can say that the effect that you see in the observed mean differences between these two randomly selected treatment and control groups is actually the causal effect and not a correlation. Okay. So, as I said, experimental data is possibly the best way to unveil causality. However, some of the times it is rare in economics and many other social sciences to have experimental data. For instance, the example that I just gave you, that I choose 100 of you and I mandate that 50 of you which I randomly pick would attend my classes and 50 of you would not attend my classes. Now, of course, I would be ethically incorrect to not let 50 of you attend my classes or to make it compulsory for 50 of you to attend my classes. So, given the ethical consideration in many of the social problems around us, we can rarely run an experiment, and that means that we would not be able to unveil the causal story that we often talk about or we are often interested in. So, because we have problems in getting experimental data, what we need is non-experimental or observational data, and once we have observational and non-experimental data, what we would do is we would use statistical techniques to infer something about causality. What we would do is we would use some other statistical techniques, econometric techniques, that would allow us to construct the counterfactual that we would easily construct in an experimental setting. Now, when in the absence of an experimental setting, what we would do once again, what we would do is we would use the observational data, we would apply the econometric techniques to construct a correct counterfactual. The reason we want to do this is many of the times we are interested in many questions, as I said, in economics, in social sciences in general, in business policy decisions also, to be able to apply different economic theories and understand whether they work in reality. It could be an economic theory, it could be a sociological theory, it could be a business theory, a management theory maybe. So, for instance, suppose I am interested in the question that whether in a farm is trying to decide what would improve its productivity. Now, it could either go for a payment scheme, a performance payment scheme, wherein the employees are paid according to their performance. So, for instance, to make the example more concrete, suppose I am talking about a garment industry. Now, people make clothes throughout the day, they have to repeat the same job one after the other. So, they can either make 10 pieces of garments in a day. So, I can pay him according to how many pieces of garments this particular man makes, a particular woman or a particular woman makes in a day, or I could fix the wage that in a day you are going to get 1000 rupees, not more than that, no matter how many pieces of cloth or pieces of that particular garment you make. economic theory suggests that there is a problem with the fixed wage scheme because it does not give you the motivation to produce more. On the other hand, when I pay you according to your performance, you have the motivation to produce more. On the other hand, I could say that a similar type of scheme, let us say we are talking about the same garment industry, and there are people who are maybe motivated, but who wants to work in peace. So, peacefulness is possibly achieved through a fixed wage regime. I say that I am going to give you 1000 rupees per day of work, and you make as many as you want to make. Now, these people may be at peace, they would make 10 pieces of garments anyway, but when I ask them to produce and when I actually pay them according to their productivity, which is basically according to their performance, it is possibly in this hurry to make more and more garments, they actually make an error in one of those garments, in two of those garments. So, maybe their error actually goes up, and finally what you see is you have only 8 pieces of garments that they have made that can be marketed because they are all correctly done, and there are 4 more pieces. So, they have actually produced 12 pieces in the performance pay regime, but those 4 more pieces are actually produced with some form of error because they were trying to work faster, not in peace. So, it is not really clear a priori whether a fixed wage regime would give you higher productivity from the workers or a performance pay regime would give you higher productivity from the workers. Now, you can think of experiments to conduct to answer this particular question, where you have a particular firm and you give some of the employees a performance pay and some of the employees a fixed pay, but it is not always possible. So, generally what we would see is we have observational data from various factories, from various farms in India, and what you would see is their output per hour or output per day. So, some form of productivity measure, and you want to say something about the usefulness or the benefits of a performance pay as opposed to a fixed wage by just looking at this observational data. So, what we are going to learn is we are going to learn statistical techniques like the instrumental variables. So, you could use what we would be doing is we would try to learn about various statistical techniques that would help us to use observational data and say something about the predictions of economic theory. So, as I said, just to repeat what I just said, that we can use an empirical analysis which uses observational data to test a theory or to estimate a relationship. So, essentially what we would be doing is we would be testing formal economic theory, economic models by using various econometric techniques in the absence of a situation where we can use experiments. So, once again, our first best possibly the first best outcome is to use an experiment to test economic theory. When we cannot use economic an experimental setting, what we would be looking for is use observational data and to create a situation similar to an experiment to say something about causality. Now, in many cases, as I just gave you an example of performance pay versus fixed wage, in many cases what you will see is economic theory and social theory is actually ambiguous about what will happen in reality when you go to the data. So, to formally understand the problem that I just the example that I just gave you of performance pay versus fixed pay, suppose we write down the problem. So, our question is whether wages tied to performance or output lead to higher productivity. So, what we would do is we would run a regression that looks like this. What we have on the left hand side of this equation is productivity of a worker. How many pieces of garments does the worker produce in a particular day or a particular month? You can fix the time frame. And what we are trying to test is whether the worker produces more pieces of garments if that worker is placed in an incentive pay regime as opposed to the worker is placed in a fixed wage regime. So, what you see over here in the equation as incentive pay is essentially a dummy variable reflecting whether the worker is in incentive pay or in fixed wage regime. Now, in this equation what you have is you have the variable incentive pay and the corresponding coefficient beta 1, which is basically reflecting whether basically reflecting the effect of this pay scheme, either the fixed wage or the performance pay, on output, on productivity. So, how you would interpret beta 1 is basically, if you find a positive significant beta 1, what you would say is that incentive pay actually leads to higher productivity amongst the workers. Now, can we consider such a finding as a causal finding, as the causal effect of incentive pay on productivity? The point is that here, while we have this error term which is supposed to be a random error term u, what we might end up getting is actually a so, what we have here is we are measuring the impact of incentive pay on productivity or output, and this beta 1 coefficient essentially measures the effect that incentive pay would have on productivity as compared to fixed wage regime. So, suppose if we have a positive beta 1, we would be saying that incentive pay leads to higher productivity compared to fixed wage. Now, the problem is that can we consider beta 1 to be a causal estimate or the causal relationship between incentive pay and productivity, or is it just reflecting some sort of correlation which might not be causal? For instance, this u that you have in the regression, the error term, it includes other factors that affect productivity, and we want to control for as many of those factors as possible that affect not only productivity, but also the choice of this wage regime, whether a company, whether a firm chooses to go for fixed wage as opposed to a performance pay or an incentive pay. For instance, it could be that suppose you have observational data and you see that some firms have chosen incentive pay, some other firms have chosen fixed wage. Now, in response to the fact that some firms have chosen incentive pay, it is possible that only the very motivated workers who have very high ambition join the firm that chooses performance pay. Then you will obviously see that motivation is there in the error term u, which is connected to both productivity and whether a firm chooses incentive pay or not. The problem comes from the fact that motivation would be driving your productivity, but not really the incentive pay. So, what you observe as a correlation between incentive pay and productivity is actually driven by this unobserved motivation which is there in you, and we cannot control for, because you seldom see motivation, you can seldom measure motivation. So, this is the problem that we are dealing with, and what I am trying to say is, in this course we will look at experimental methods to actually unveil the causality, to have the true impact of incentive pay on productivity, which is the causal estimate. And in the absence of a situation where we can construct an experiment, we will have observational data, but we would use econometric techniques to say something about causality, to get to the true value of beta 1 as much as possible. One more example that I will give you is, recently you might have seen the case of demonetization. Now, we do not know a priori whether demonetization, you can think of various economic theories both for and against demonetization, that it will have some beneficial effect on the economy. Now, we do not know finally which of these would actually materialize and whether the economy would actually in the long run benefit from demonetization or not. Now, of course, it is very difficult to have an experiment running on demonetization. You would have to take all the countries and think that we pick countries randomly and institute a demonetization. This would both be logically difficult to have and ethically difficult to have. So, instead what you might want to have is, you have observational data both before and after demonetization happened, and you have various other variations in the data in terms of the effect of demonetization that various sectors might have, and you want to use some econometric theory or some econometric techniques to actually test whether demonetization had a positive effect or did not have so much of a beneficial effect in the long run. So, what we would be doing essentially is we would be learning some of these techniques like the instrumental variable technique, like the difference in differences technique, to understand whether we can use observational data, to understand situations whether we can use observational data to say something about the effect that a particular policy intervention would have, that a particular business decision would have on the final outcome that it targets. So, to summarize what we said in the start of this class, and to summarize what we are going to do in the next few lectures, is basically that what we are saying here is we are trying to draw a difference between a correlation and causality. What we are interested in when we are trying to prescribe policies, or when we are trying to make business decisions, or any decision of life for that matter, is we are interested in causality, whether X leads to Y, and that is what we are going to discuss. We are going to discuss experimental methods, we are going to discuss non-experimental econometric techniques to understand and to distinguish between correlation and causality for the rest of this course.